So continuing with the questions, in your experience, how are mental health issues affecting young people? Waxaa la yidhaahdaa experience ahaan waxaa malaynaysaa dhalinyarta sidee u dul qaadanayaan dhimarka. Horta waxaa ka dareemay dhimarka marka soo baranayay iyo marka shaqada ku jiro inuu qofka marka dhalinyarta uu yahay uu high schoolka ka soo baxayo iyo college-ka galayo ama markuu college ku jiro college-ka dhammayn rabo inuu aada ugu bato. Markaas waxaa jira dhibaatooyin badan oo warwar badan oo iskuulka ku saabsan asxaabtiisa qofka ama asxaabteed. Markaas ayaa dareema dhimarka inuu dadka kusoo kaco, waliba dhimarka aada u waaweyn oo magacayaasha af Soomaaliga lagu haynin oo la yidhaahdo schizophreniga iyo bipolarka iyo maxaa la yidhaahdaa traumada, hadduu qof trauma ku dhacay Pt.2 oo kale, xitaa depressionka inuu qofka si xun ugu soo kaco. Waxaasna waxaa keenaya stresska iskuulka, shaqada, da-daas un. Qofka markuu yar yahay inta badan wax badan kama warwaro, marka aada u yar yahay 10 jir markuu yahay oo kale ama 12 jir, laakiin markuu soo galayo teenagerka 14, 13, 15 ilaa uu ka gaaro 20 ama ilaa 20 dhexdeeda, dhimarka horta waa saaid buu ugu dhici karaa qofka, waliba wuxuu ka imaan karaa stress.
But I feel like school is like the pivoted stage of like where like you start to see all the things that you're so stressed about, and then then I realized like when I was at uni, like I didn't really handle stress the best way. I just sucked that thing in and just continued on. But then when I left, I just realized, I was like, wow, there's a lot of things I didn't really, take care of myself. I didn't really, put myself first when I needed to and whatnot, because there was so much like weight on your shoulders that you had like all these priorities and all these things that you needed to finish. Just because I come from a first generation, I feel like we're all first generations within itself, but like going to university and then finishing it, there's like so much expectation from you and whatnot. But like when you think of like the elements that you tend to, like the elements that come within health related, like with your mental well-being, those are the things that people would like to push off.
I agree also. School is like the biggest stressor of graduating, finding a job, having a major that works. Are you going to be happy? I feel like within the millennials, we're getting out of like the traditional jobs, finding your own job, and then your parents explaining that to your parents causes another stress of saying that I'm going to take this path because I'm interested in. Figuring that's really hard, and just juggling all of that, and yes, friendships, of seeing, because I feel like through college you kind of find yourself, and you've changed, you evolved so much through high school and going through college, and then you're just a totally different person, and you're learning so many things, you're exposed to different people, and you're gaining a lot of resources and a lot of things, so that kind of changes a lot. So, and finding things that work for you. And it is really stressful turning an assignment in at 12 o'clock at night to finding an internship. 11:51. Yeah, and to finding an internship or anything like that is just too much stress, and that takes like a toll.
A lot on the youth. And this expectation, like when you're going to come out, you have to come out with the best job, and the whole comparison thing, like, okay, she did this, why didn't you get that job, or he did that, why didn't you go with that route, or like stuff like that. It kind of just really takes a toll on you, because you are doing your own thing, you're your own individual, you're like growing every day, like you're learning new stuff about yourself. But at the end of the day, it's just like, okay, if I'm doing this for myself and then I have you on my shoulder like weighing me down, like expecting me to do stuff, those are unintentional like stress relievers and things that are just piled onto the person. And I feel like that can cause, like stress and mental issues that will later impact the person.
It took me a while to, I think, sophomore year of college, just understanding this is all temporary, right? Like all this stuff you may think is a big deal, but it's gonna pass, and that day's gonna pass.
Yeah.
And you're gonna be doing other things. It's like just think about the next steps that you're gonna do in order for your future, and all this is just unnecessary stress. Just figure out a way how to cope with it along the way. There's not one person that had a linear path in life. We all have kind of zigzags and ways, and no one's honestly, there's some people that will tell you how they got there. There's some people that won't tell you.
They'll sugarcoat it.
Sugarcoat it. Feel like, oh, it's gonna be okay in this. But then when you find that one real person that tells you, I struggled, I failed that class, or I didn't land that job, or I just couldn't find anything after graduating, and you're like, okay. Like, it's okay, someone else went through it, and everyone goes through it. It's just the way that you talk about it and the people that you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
يعني waalidiintu waxay ka caawin karaan dhalinyarada la kulmaya waxyaalahaas waxaan isleeyahay dhalinyaradu waxay la kulmaan pressure oo waalidkii ku hayo ilaan waa cunugii u horreeyay waxaa laga yaabaa jaamacada aaday inuu yahay cunugii u horreeyay oo ay familka dhan higsanayeen inaad medicine aado, engineering aado, muxuu ahay pharmacy aado. waalidiintu uma ahan diyaar uma ahan cunugii inuu barto wax ayna ayagu ku qanacsanayn. So waalidkii mas-uulkii cunugii ay ku kordhinayaan marka ay dhahaan waa inaa fieldkan aado ama kan aado ama kan aado. Marka yacni waalidkii diyaar uma ahan inay cunugii acknowledge garayaan baahidiisa ama waxa u baahan yahay. marka waalidiintu inay maaragtay saacidi karaan cunugii oo marka uu high school ka qalin jabiyo ay u ogolaadaan wax soo ku qanacsan yahay. ilaan haddii aad option siiso waxaa laga yaabaa inuu asagana happy ku noqdo waxa uu choose garaynayo adigana aad support ku siin kartid. laakiin haddaan support jirin field ani aanan raalli ka ahayn cunugayga uu doorto, that's added layer of pressure. marka in maaragtay loo yahay dhalinyaradii maadaama that they are struggling in receptive ay yihiin waalidiintu to accommodate the choices that your child is making would decrease mental health related issues.
In what ways have the Somali parents negatively impacted the mental health of their children, knowingly or unknowingly? Sidee Somali waalidiinta u degdegaan ciyaalkooda waxaa la yidhaahdaa caafimaadka fikirka ama caafimaadka maskaxda ciyaalkooda
iyagoo og ama aan ogeyn.
iyagoo og ama ogeyn.
I think habab kaleeto inaan waalidku u dareemeynin inay cunugooda maskaxiyan u dhaawacayaan ama dhibaato u geysanayaan waxaa ka mid ah cunuga markaadan la baran luuqadda uu comfortable ku yahay. markaadan English aqoonin, markii cunugaadii uu luuqadii inta bartay adiga uu ku turjumayo muxuu ahaay adan af Soomaaliga isaga uusan aqoonin, yacni adigana af Soomaali baad ku hadlaysaa asagana af Soomaali ma yaqaano. marka disconnection meeshaas ka dhacayo, yacni you can't relate. sababtoo ah waxa adna luuqad kale ku hadlaysaa asagana luuqad kale ku hadlaya, almost becomes in liini kala turjumo. marka emotionally you're not connected. So whatever he's going through, you're not going through. You don't understand. There's just disconnect. So hababka adan cunugii u caawini karin waxaa ka mid ah luuqadiisa kuma hadashid, therefore advocacy uma samayn kartid, and you can't show up to defend them. Schoolki inta tagtid uma doodi kartid, and muxuu ahay dhakhtarki inta tagtid uma doodi kartid. marka habab fara badan ayaan dhaawac ugu geysan karnaa dhalinyarada markaanaan fahmaynin their identities and their languages and how they show up in the world. We're saying be me where we can't even be them because this is just disconnect. Language wise, culture wise, identity wise, we're different. I'm not gonna all down high, you're gonna usub yihiin. Waxay haystaan bits and pieces of me and bits and pieces of themselves in this new environment. marka disconnection kaasna haddii maaragtay cunuga ama luuqadda uu ku hadlo haddaysan fursad ku siinaynin inaad Soomaaliga bartid ama any other languages as we speak, at least la baro luuqadda uu ku hadlo si aad adiga isagiiba isu fahamtaan. haddaan la isfahmaynin barrier. marka taasna waxaan kala yacni waalidiinta ku encourage garayn lahaa yacni inay bartaan ama ku isku taxalujiyaan cunuga inay relationship la leeyihiin ilaan relationship wuxuu ka yimaadaa communication dusan jirin waxba ma ii sheegi kartid.
There's no foundation.
There's no foundation. The other thing is Somali community, and this is gonna sound يعني in a generalized سمينايو reactionary يعني we react. You come home, you're like, oh my god, I had a terrible day, and it's like, I had a terrible day too. That is not what the child is looking for at that moment. All they're looking at is, tell me more. Like opening that dialogue of saying, I see you, I hear you, I feel you, have a seat. Let's just even sit. You don't have to do anything. You just sit. And that kind of creates vulnerability being accepted and being receptive.
And like if they don't want to like have a conversation at that moment, just you're giving them the first step of saying like, I'm here, you can always come to me.
Yeah.
Because some kids won't feel comfortable at first, like, oh, this is awkward. But then if they know that you're going to be there no matter what, then they're like, okay, then I have some.
And that's at the basic level when they are in, 1 year old, 2 year old, you grow with them. But you can't start saying at high school and college experiencing crises, say, oh, I hear you now. It's not going to work like that. You have to have a foundation from the get-go, from the moment the child is born to until they get married and move on their independent world.
I don't think Somali parents realize the pressures on us to succeed in everything that we do in life, whether that's like succeeding in school or succeeding to be a good child to them. I think this kind of relates to intergenerational trauma. Like since they did everything on their own all the time, it's like now you could do it too, But on top of that, it's like we're in a foreign country. We also have all these other things that we deal with, like racism, like Islamophobia, and we tackle on so many other things that they don't see. And when you tell them, like, sometimes when I tell my parents I'm tired, they be like, what are you tired about? Like, what do you do, It's like they don't really understand that mentally you could be tired. Mentally you could be drained from handling so many things and trying to be perfect in everything that you do in life. So when they take away, when they don't really understand that, it kind of takes away from the relationship, like parent versus child. I feel like certain children just don't really open up to their parents because they don't understand, because they don't take the time to understand their kids and things that we have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And then that just affects the youth mentally, because your parents are like people that like love you, like unconditionally and stuff. And if you feel like you can't really just open up to them and be 100% with them, then who can you really open up to? Who can you be 100% with? Who can understand you if your parents, who are the most understanding, cannot understand you? So that just creates even more issues and worry and doubt and trying to decide or trying to think if you're actually making it in life, trying to please them, making sure that they're happy with who you are as an adult, but also just trying to survive in this society that's always changing, that's always putting people in this like category of how we should be and how we should act and stuff. So it's a lot.
I think for the unknowingly part, I think this is where imposter syndrome gets created, because we have to behave a certain way so that way our parents can look at us a certain way. And then that also affects you because you feel like you're always having to portray this other version of yourself, whether it's to your parents, whether it's at school, and then that unknowingly becomes something that you are not in touch or in real with your own identity, because you feel like I have to behave a certain way so my parents can understand me, versus you being your raw self. And then it kind of limits that opportunity for you to have that dialogue or even create that dialogue with your parents and family, and even talking about your emotions. Because you unknowingly, I feel like as someone of color, you're always having to be this version of you that is deemed appropriate or seen as normal. So that's unknowingly that's where you don't know you're even doing it sometimes because you're just already in that mode. So it can be unhealthy habits that sometimes you might have to break away. Maybe toxic traits too.
How has Dhaqan Celis negatively contributed to the mental instability in our youth? Siduu Dhaqan Celiska dhibaato u geystay dhalinyarta caafimaadka maskaxda ama caafimaadka fikirka?
أنا عندنا دقن علين لكن وحنا زلاي هاي دقن عليس كدباتوين وكيني كرا وحواي وحلا يعني عنو دقن كادي بقى قلدن مركز دقن كي قلدناي أن كاسو سحينا هاللي إن عنو دقن كيسو ما قلدنا وحيالا لقى يابا إن أي أبا هنت هاي إن ماركتي يعني أنا دقن كالعلين عن دقن كعنو قلو عليني عنو هذا ماشان كيني هذا ماشان كل علي inta uu koraayay waa la joogtay waa arkaysay dhaqankan aad leedahay marka waa lagaa bedelaa ama waa lagaa saxayaa waa dhaqan aad adigu bartay ama meesha uu ku nool yahay ayuu celiso Soomaaliya iyo waxa ka dhacayo cunugii shaqo kuma laha waa ku cusub tahay so kiisiyaad waxaad leedahay kii uu ku koray ay waxaad leedahay waa qaldan yahay kan baan ku baraya haddana taas ayaaba keenaysaba cunuga inuu ku arko yani ama uu arko waxba iga qaldan wixii iga qaldanaay ayaa layga saxaya kana ma aqaano laba qalad ma saxdo waa qalad waxba qaldamay qalad kale aan ku saxaya.
Dhaqan Celis is hard because if you're, I don't know, I've never understood that term because if you were either born here or you raised here, this is your culture, this is your home. Even if your parents moved from Somalia or whatever, you know. So it's very hard to take somebody out of their own natural environment that they've known, that they've grown up in, and then take them to completely foreign land, even though that is their home. It just provides space for confusion and the kid not knowing where they stand. And then I think that also creates a problem of the kid being from two different cultures and also trying to maintain both cultures, which is also just hard mentally on a lot of the individuals. And I think Dhaqan Celis also just creates more problems than it does good because then the kid might not want to go there. So now you're forcing a kid to do something that she doesn't want to do, which really reflects on your relationship as a parent and a child because now the child can't even trust you and stuff. And this child is thinking, okay, well, my mom is sending me back. And most of the time the parents are not going back with the children. You know, the parents are going back by themselves and are living with individuals that they don't know, that they've never been around. So it's like they build this idea of, okay, my parent does not want me, so they're sending me away. And the kid is not going to say, oh, like, I'm bad, that's why they're sending me back. It's like, my parents don't want me. That is why they don't want to see me, they don't want to deal with me anymore. And if my parents don't want me, then that's just who else is going to want me, you know? And then they're just going to have these other internalizing problems of maybe even hating their parents or never ever trusting them again. And I don't know what kids see when they go to Somalia, but it's probably way different than what they've known and seen here. So Dhaqan Celis as a form of like punishment it does more bad than good. Yeah.
Have you guys like met any people that came back, like had any success stories or whatever, like Dhaqan Celis?
It's actually the other end.
Huh?
It's like, it's the other side. It's like they relapse into what they were doing before.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, I feel like it's just ruining the, I mean, like, our parents always talk about how beautiful Somalia was before the war. And then you're sending the kid over there as punishment and they have like a negative image of their own country.
Yeah.
They're saying it's a place where I have to go because I made bad decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, what are you doing here? Because if you can't help out your child here, what makes you think they're going to improve better over there?
Yeah.
So creating that space.
No, have you guys ever like encountered people?
Oh yeah.
Like just going down there for a bit and it came back. Have you seen like different personalities or different characteristics that they took from there and then brought back here? Or like do you think that, hey, that Dhaqan Celis, you know, changed him? Or like, hey, well, we lost a soul, you know? Have you guys encountered those people yet? Or like
I think, go ahead.
I think there might be some instances where, given that the whole family goes, it's not just one child that needs to be corrected. If the whole family goes and there's stability and there is normalizing that we're all here for vacation, getting to know some other family members, there is a realization of acceptance of who you are as a Somali youth. But because it has been done in a way where we're saying there's something wrong about you, we're gonna correct by sending you back home, it's rare individually. But as a collective, a whole family going back, I've seen some positive, even though they think, well, I'm gonna come back, what was that word? Oh my God, why am I brain? When you speak, when you're just fresh and you come back. Huh? Fob, there you go. Yeah, they always say if I stay there for 4 or 5 years or 2, 3 years, I'm gonna come back fob or whatever that word is. Exactly. I'm going to lose my accent, I'm going to become less than. So there's always this idea of nothing is perfect no matter what you do. But it's just having the relationship with your child, whatever you're doing, that you're doing it with them. Not just saying you're a bad seed, you get to go back home and you need to be corrected.
I honestly, I met some in my youth here. I mean, I'm not old, but you know, just my childhood friends that were sent back home. And I feel like when they came back, I feel like they, you know, took some PTSD a lot of times from, like, you know, when you're from an environment like the way we live and then you're brought down there, you see a lot of things that you're not really used to seeing. So I feel like that puts a strain on the child, and that whole Dhaqan type of notion that we usually just throw the kid out there backfires. So it's just like, okay, you wanted him or her. It's usually a male that they do the Dhaqan for, to send them back home, and then when they come back, they're not the same self. They're more you know, by themselves, reserved. A lot of times they're more hostile, they're more angry, you know, at the parents and such. But you see, like, the reason why, because you are transitioning them from something that they've been used to for like 17, 18 years of their life, and then, you know, thrown into something for like 2 and 3 years, and all you see is, like, I'm not saying Somalia is picture perfect, or not even saying like other countries, like people go to Ethiopia, people go to Kenya for a bit. There are other rural areas that people go to that they'll see traumatic things, or they'll encounter traumatizing things and such, that they can't really, you know, talk to people because they're in a new environment. And I feel like parents should, like you mentioned, if you are wanting the child to be, you know, a little more, you know, independent, or a little more, like, you know, you want something out for the child, like you're looking for good more than harm, I think holistically you have to do it as a group instead of individually, because the kid, it's not even a kid anymore, like the adult is gonna, you know, have more harm done to him than you may even realize. So.
And then I think there's also this idea of stigma. When you're taken back, everyone knows you've done something terrible, so you're needing to be corrected. So it's also creates, you're taking them out of bad environment, assuming, and you're taking them back there, and everybody's looking at them, oh my God, you came here because you've done something terrible in wherever you came from.
Everybody knows.
Exactly.
Everybody knows.
The whole idea, the notion of Dhaqan Celis is, I think, a terrible language, in a sense, descriptive. It doesn't have a positive impact. It's negative. Dhaqan Celis, you lost your way, so we're reteaching you. And I think it's not, I look at it as a bad choices.
I think it's a cop-out. More than anything. But.
And I think earlier somebody said the Somali community is reactive. So this is a reactive moment for the family when they're shipping somebody back home for Dhaqan Celis. So, yeah. I think you're talking about vacation. But I think you can have someone at a very young age go to Somalia with the family in more protective way. And you can you can use a different word and say this is dhaqan bar, teaching the culture instead of we lost your way, and so you have to get it back as soon as possible. So not being reactive, but being responding to crisis before it happens, even years before it happens.
And you gotta make it like, in order for the person to even want to go back, you gotta make it a communal thing, you know? Like, let's all enjoy the Malayalam for the good and the bad, you know? So, I think that's something that we need to
work on.
Yeah, a lot, you know? Not make Somalia seem like, it's the worst place in the world, you know? It really isn't. It's
I
truly
think the
beautiful.
media plays a role in that. It's not the families that are saying Somalia is bad. I think the social media element is Somalia is a terrible place to go to, and I think if you can explore and take the politics out of it, there are places that you can go and visit that are not so terrible.
And a lot of times it's your experience too, because I might have like a beautiful experience, and then you might have like, you know, a different experience. So it's just how people want to take it.
Frame it, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you guys think Dhaqan Celis is for the parents or really for the child? Because I feel like that's also, like you kind of said, like a cop-out. Like the parents are probably like, oh, we did such a bad job at raising this kid, like matho bada, you know, akhlaq malai, all this stuff. And it's just like, let's just send them back. But really, I think sometimes they try to say it's the kid, but really they're just trying to hide behind the fact that like we didn't do so good to raise this kid. They're just gonna say it's the kid that's just bad. We're just gonna send him away so the community doesn't see how bad he is, and we don't get asked questions, and we don't get questioned about our parenting skills and all that stuff.
And we hope and pray that he comes back better. You know.
It's like a temporary fix. You're just putting a Band-Aid on a wound. You're not figuring out ways how to maneuver around and how to help this child, because when they come back, that's another session for you to figure out, because they can learn things back home. Let's say here they were doing drug abuse and they get exposed to that back home, and you doing rehab and helping them out over here, and they're going to be exposed to more things that you took them away to. So it's like a whole process. That's only temporary.
And if you really think about it, the things that you are afraid to handle here, they do there too. It's literally open, accessible. It's more easier there, you know? So it's just like, I might as well continue to do what I want to do and, you know, live the way I want to live. But then it's just going to be like, when they come back, are we going to talk about this again? No, you know? I might need to do round 2, stuff like that. But I don't know. I feel like they need to stop with the whole suffocating and throwing children out to like places that they're not really ready for, you know, and just using, like I said, it's a cop-out sometimes, so it's not fair for everyone at the end of the day.
Why is depression and anxiety under-identified or misdiagnosed in black youth in urban areas where there's racial disparity? Waxaa malanaysiin inay dadka dhalinyarta madow Soomaalida ka tirsan yihiin dhimarka la yidhaahdo anxiety iyo depressionka maxaa loo khaldaa markuu dhakhtarka ama qofka therapist-ka uu isleeyahay qofkan waxaasuu qabaa ama waxaas buu qabaa, maxaa anxiety iyo depression markasta loo waayaa qofka madow oo Soomaalida ka tirsan yihiin?
There's like a huge stigma, and we just don't know the definition of like depression and understanding what it is. We always think about the extreme part of depression. Like we always say like, oh, there's someone that's just in a dark room the whole day and that. Like it could be something that you just went through at school, or a little thing that it's been stretched out, it's been longer. You've noticed that your attitude towards certain things and your personality, things have changed. But as being a black person, you're not exposed to any of that. Like there's a lot of things that are always hidden, and we don't talk about mental health. We don't talk about what's going on with ourselves. It's a thing that should be hidden away in closed doors. Some people may not even know that they even have depression until they understand what it is, and may have to go through schooling, or may have to be a professional from that field telling them that they did have depression, and that is starting the cycle of education and understanding. So just there's no resources within the black community available, accessible for a lot of people. It's just within a certain group that are really interested and know it. But if only we had social media as such a great platform, if there's more information on there for other youth of color, I think that would help a lot.
If they show any signs of either anxiety or something is happening internally, we look at it as having a bad behavior. So it's seen as a behavior rather than mental health illness. So the teacher and educators are not looking at the child and recognizing the mental health element, but seeing rather as a behavior where they get into suspension and disciplinary areas in school, and mental health is the least looked at when young men interact with different systems.
So what you're saying is racism?
Yeah.
So the providers, so the therapists also often, if they are white therapists, or someone who is not familiar with the Black community in general, and have less interest in knowing, because there are a lot of good therapists that have interest and say, okay, I don't know this person's culture, I'm going to look into it. But if they're not like that, often they can say, well, this person is not talking about what other people, when other people come in, other people of different races, when they come in, when it comes to depression and anxiety. So they could be missed in that sense that the therapist is not really looking harder for this person or in a different way. I think somebody mentioned that depression comes out in a different way for people of color, but also African cultures. So when someone is feeling depressed, they might have aching back or a headache for no reason, and the doctor can't find anything. So sometimes people can miss that and say, well, you need to go to the doctor instead of coming to do therapy. Instead of just saying, oh, did you go to the doctor? What did they say? And just doing more due diligence when you diagnosing. And on the other side, Black people in general are more overdiagnosed when it comes to severe mental illnesses like schizophrenia, bipolar. They are often more diagnosed with those things. That's something I found out. So in my own work, sometimes that's what I think of and say, okay, this person, the psychiatrist is saying this, but I'm going to look a lot more careful if this person actually has schizophrenia, because it's really easily diagnosed for Black people in general.
Also, the part that's in urban areas, environment has a significant impact on our health, overall health. And when people of color or even Black people are in urban areas, it's usually due to their socioeconomic status. It's not in the best of neighborhoods, or they don't have the same access to resources as their white counterparts or their wealthier counterparts. So that affects when it comes to being identified, because they can go on with an illness and not even know it's a mental health illness, because that's what they see as being normal, or they've seen traits in their family members that's just how they've always been. So they think that is deemed as normal behavior, and then also has to do with access to resources, and then also mistrust between health providers and the Black community, or health providers and the people on minority communities. There's always been that distrust that they've been established, and so having someone navigate that is just another layer of stress. There's always some sort of barrier, whether it's a language barrier, transportation barrier, some sort of barrier that's limiting someone from seeking help.
I think also society thinks of Black people to just be super resilient because of all the adversity that they face, so they never think of depression and anxiety being like a mental illness. Also, society portrays Black people as violent, angry, hostile people, and they do look at them as from a behavioral standpoint rather than, okay, why is this person behaving like this, or like what are they feeling and thinking and stuff like that. So I think that's why they don't really get diagnosed with things like that, because racism does play a role in it too.
How does overconsumption of Black trauma and violence on Black bodies in the media affect our mental health? For example, police shootings. Sidee qofka mental healthkiisa ama caafimaadka fikirka sidee wax u gaarsiisaa markuu qofka arkaayo ama la tusaayo qof madow oo la dilaayo markasta TV-ga warka oo kale. Example fiican waxa weeyaan marka nala tusaayo askari tooganayo qof madow taas baa aad u badan.
We become numb to it over time, and it's just, you can't fathom. I remember Trayvon Martin when it happened, and I was like, why would they shoot? Like, I was still young, I just didn't understand, and I was like, is our blackness or like a weapon? Like, do they really fear us that much where they have to shoot someone? I was scared all the time for my brothers. They're not gonna say, oh, you're African, we're not gonna shoot you. Like, that's the thing that always, you kind of perceive it as like, oh, it's other people, not you. So then just seeing a cop driving by, taking precautions, knowing your rights. I can't put it into words.
It makes you on edge, like makes you feel on edge all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And then that also affects you, like DNA and biologically wise, because if you're always stressed out, you know, that affects your cortisol level, and you're always like in this fight or flight response, and you're not making clear judgments when things like that do happen. So I think it affects us mentally a lot, because it could be any one of us. And when we constantly see Black innocent people getting killed live on TV, and the officer or whoever did it walks away for free like it's nothing, it makes us think, like, are we not really valued as human beings in this country? Like, if things could just happen like that, it's like, it just makes you think, like, mentally wise, oh, okay, I'm not worthy enough of like an investigation, I'm not worthy enough of people like talking about me and making sure that my name is out there and stuff. It just makes you think you're just not enough, you're not worthy of anything at all. And then you start internalizing a lot of this stuff and saying, what is it about me, you know? And then maybe it might even just lead to like you not really liking yourself, because you see how people of your color are getting treated, you know, even though our color is not what we chose, you know, it's just biologically, whatever, however God made us is who we are. So I think we do develop a lot of internalizing behaviors to where we might not like ourselves, we might not like the people who look like us, but also it just makes you wonder where you stand in society, you know. If like a dog gets better justice than a Black person, it's like, okay, like I'm not really valued in the society that I live in. And it makes you also just look at other people differently too, you know, and just makes you question a lot of things, and maybe cause you to become depressed, or maybe cause you to feel anxious every time you see a police officer in your neighborhood and stuff like that. So it just sends a lot of, I think, red flags, and if we're constantly seeing it over and over again, it also takes away from the people, because you're like, oh, this is normal now. Every week it's like somebody that gets shot. It's like, it's becoming so normalized to the point where it's like, oh, okay, it happened, so it's really not that big of a deal. But it is a big deal because it's happening so often.
I think it creates a sense of not being valued, where young men are joining gangs, falling trapped into addiction, into, you know, all kind of things that are causing them to flee or to lose hope and become victim of violence, especially if we're concentrated in poor neighborhoods where drugs are available, violence is available, the police is constantly watching you. It kind of creates that trap where you're like, I don't have a way out. So young men don't value themselves, and if you go to school, I'm sure you haven't seen many young men in schools as well. They probably drop out of high schools or don't go to universities. So there's a lot of ways that it can factor into your mental well-being, that you deviate from the normal way of life.
So the person, him or herself, they do have the responsibility of what they consume in the media. So that's a big one, I would say. So not denying that there's a lot of shootings happening, focus on Black men, but also other people of color. But if you're on Facebook, if you're on Instagram or any other social medias, or if you're watching the news, how much of that are you doing? That's something I ask myself all the time. And at one point I just decided I'm not gonna watch the news as much or at all. Maybe just the local news. So I feel like before you get to a point that you are feeling anxious to go outside, you're feeling depressed, I would say there's a lot of control that the person themselves has over what they consume, and just being aware, mindful of just your surroundings, mindful of your activities after you come home from school or after you come home from work. Just being mindful.
Yeah, growing up in a generation of tech, it is kind of hard to not be on social media, to not know what's going on in the world, because everything is so easily like accessible to us nowadays, and that's how we communicate with people on a daily basis. But I do agree with you saying that we as individuals do have a say in what we consume on a day-to-day basis, but it's still there. Whether, even if we say let's get rid of social media, racism, we still see it in our day-to-day basis and stuff like that. Islamophobia, whether you see that on TV, you experience that, you know. So I think it's both. Like, be mindful of the things you watch, be mindful of everything that you consume, whether that's social media, what you eat, what you say, what you read, but also at the same time know that this stuff is happening, whether it's happening to somebody in Atlanta or somebody that's like your neighbor and stuff. So, yeah.
Do you think Somali youth use drugs as a coping mechanism for what they are dealing with? Uma leenisin dhalinyarta Soomaalida inay droogo use gareeyaan sida dhibaatadooda iska qaadaan ama ku qariyaan?
I feel like it's an easy answer.
Yes, unanimously.
Yeah.
So yes.
I feel like it's just an easier method to just like use that to, you know, numb the pain that you're in, or not avoid the things that you don't want to talk about, you know, because when you're just like, you know, using drugs, it would just be like a quick remedy. It's just like take it in and then soothe you out for a little while, and then I don't know, and then that's how people just continue to use it and such. But yeah, I would say that they do use drugs as a coping mechanism. Other people use alcohol as a coping mechanism. Other people use, people use different things as coping mechanism to avoid the mental health issues that they have. And they're not issues, I'm saying like mental health illnesses that they don't want to talk about. I'll fix that, but yeah.
Yeah, it's actually, they use drugs. Even some people use alcohol, Somali community, to deal with issues. If you are self-medicating with drugs or alcohol, it will help temporarily in the moment. Like in the long run, we're gonna get worse and worse and worse until you have to be put somewhere, a hospital or rehab. So it just makes things worse in the long run. But it's understandable why someone would be using drugs or alcohol in that moment. It definitely helps with some of the issues that they're dealing with in that moment.
There's also a component of where someone has an addiction issue, develops an addiction issue, and then mental health then becomes after. So it's important that to recognize you don't necessarily have a mental health related issue at that moment, but you have an addiction, and then by using you develop mental health. So sometimes it's schizophrenia can be drug induced, psychosis can be drug induced. So you were fine, you had nothing, but then you use drugs which your system is not familiar with, and you develop psychosis. And some of them could be long lasting and some of them could be temporary. So there's always that issue of if you come in contact with these difficult drugs, like for example meth, you can develop psychosis that you will have for long term. So it's not always necessarily you had, of course there's some environmental factors that push you to use drugs, but some mental health related illnesses can come from drug use. So considering that also when we're trying to maybe try you try and then boom, you have a psychosis. And it's really difficult to decipher those because we're not ready, we're not educated enough, we're not able to recognize when a child is coming in contact with drugs for the first time and how to seek help. Some of these illnesses can be managed with medication and therapy, and you don't have to be in addiction to resolve it. But you came in contact with some of these drugs, opioids, and that's how you develop your initial mental health breakdown.
What's the connection between qaad use and mental health issues? Maxaa ka dhexeeya qofka markuu qaad cunayo ama qaadka iyo caafimaadka fikirka ama caafimaadka maskaxda? Horta waxaan bilowdaa qaadka de waa wax culturekeena caadi u ah, laakiin marka la eego qaadka muxuu ka samaysan yahay, waxaa la yidhi de waa daroogo kala un. Marka Soomaalidana daroogo markaan maqlo waxaa ka fikirnaa inta badan daroogada cadaanka inta badan ay qaataan, heroinka iyo methamphetamine iyo cocaineka iyo marijuanada xitaa. Culture ahaan caadi noo tahay, laakiin jidhkii iyo bahasha qaadka weli effect buu ku yeelan karaa oo qofka dhibaato u geysan kara, oo weliba waxay ku xidhan tahay siduu u qaadanaya qofka, how often iyo dadku la joogo, shaqadii ma ka haday, reerkiisa ma ka tegay, dhibaato badan buu u geysan karaa.
And it's like a stimulant, so then you can be up the whole night and not having enough sleep can lead to a lot of things to your mental health. And it's like a cycle that you keep going back into. And how many hours are you sitting there and doing it? So it's like a lot of things of like work, all like even on your social status and meeting up with friends. So you're just being by yourself with, I don't know, a bag or whatever for like hours. It's not healthy. So then you start talking to yourself because you're not having enough sleep. So it's just a lot of things that can, and it can lead to greater damage where you have to start taking actual drugs to help you ease that and start having a normal sleeping cycle that can take forever. And while you're on the drugs that your psychiatrist will provide you with, that will make you sleep for a couple of hours. I do know someone that did do it, and it's like it takes a toll on the whole family, and it's really hard because you lose a person over the years, and they're not going to be the same again. No matter how much you try, they're going to have relapses over and over again, and it's damaging. It destroys relationships. It destroys a lot of things in your life, and some of the things cannot be repaired. And your brain is such like an important part of our body, and damaging certain areas where you need to talk and have conversations, and thinking of like the basic needs that human needs gets destroyed over time. So yeah.
What are ways we can address self-care before one's emotional or mental state spirals out of control? What do we do as a community to bring about change? Maxaa ka qaban karnaa intuuna qofka waxaa la yidhaahdaa intuuna qofka dhimar ku dhicin iyo muxuu Somali community-ga muxuu qaban karaa qofka ama dadka Somali community ka mid ah isbedel?
I think as a Somali community we can also recognize and accept that there are emotional needs that each and every one of us has. So early on, maybe starting to kind of allow children to find spaces and times and incorporate that as they grow, to educate the community and say, you know, eat is not the only time that you have to spend family time. We don't take time, we don't create spaces, we don't demand. We talk a lot, but we don't demand neighborhoods to have safe spaces. You can take your child to the library, you can take your child to the park. I mean, I think breaking the barriers that separate us is incorporating that self-care that the whole family needs to, if your child sees you doing things for yourself, that teaches them that it's okay to give yourself permission to do things as well. So the whole family needs to be aware, and I think that's where the community comes in, is to provide space, sitting together at the dinner, putting phones away, turning the TV off, reconnecting and building that stability, eating a meal together. I remember when I was growing up, we never ate alone. We always came for breakfast, we all sat together, we ate lunch, dinner, all at the same time. Now, being a mother, being busy, going to school, working, I don't remember last time I sat with my kids and ate a meal.
Ramadan.
I cook the food, I put it in the fridge.
Yeah,
Even in
that's
Ramadan, we don't do it because I drink my coffee and I'm running to pray, and then everybody does things, and then we're grabbing and going, and I mean, we're busy because the lifestyle is such, we just don't have enough time. But if we don't stop and think about connections and put things away, turn the TV off, and say, at this time we're gonna sit together, even if it doesn't have to be every day, 3 meals a day, but at least you can make it special where once a week we sit and we eat and we don't use social media. If you can make it, I mean, we're seeing the signs and symptoms of disconnection. What do we do now? All these innovative ways of doing things, if it's not bringing us back to connect with each other, we're going to be further away, and by the time we realize we're in a household and nobody's talking to each other. There are times when I send a text and say, shh, go to sleep, because I don't want to get out of bed. But I send a text message telling my kids, keep it down so I can sleep. Whereas I hate yelling. I don't yell. I'm the type of person who doesn't yell. So rather than me coming out of my room, walking downstairs and saying, you need to keep it down, I'd rather send a text message, because that is going to disrupt what? Myself getting ready to go to sleep. I send this text message saying, keep it down, please. But what does that show you? It shows we're drifting from ways of life. And I'm the one who needs Dhaqan Celis, not my kids, right? So recognizing where we, the parents, have allowed the disconnection. So as a community, I think we can rekindle the ways that we behaved before, the way I was brought up, without making it seem like I am making my kids, like, you have to come to the table. Find ways to connect. Connection is all important.
I agree.
Do things that make you happy. I'm always the advocate. Friends consider me a hippie. I always do things that make you feel happy. It's things that you enjoy. That's what self-care means to me. For me, it's hanging out with family, hanging out with friends, doing things that I enjoy, that will relieve the stress over time. It could even mean getting your nails done, or reading a book, or just being at a park. There's a lot of proof of science of being outside in nature helps humans regulate their minds and the way that they think, and just doing things that you enjoy. That's the overall of happiness, what makes you happy as a person, and just figuring out, it's a path that you have to self-discover, and finding new things and doing things that you never would try, but that can help you to figure out what's good for you.
So we live in America. It's a very busy lifestyle. From the day that you go to school all the way to the day that you graduate from college and find a job. So for me personally, being physically active, because when you're sitting all day doing work, you're not being physically active. So for me, it's important for me to do sports, either soccer or running, just to filter many different things that I've witnessed or heard someone say to me, or just shared with me.
I think self-care is, like you said, very person-centered. You know, what might work for you may not work for somebody else. It's really important that understanding what are the things that make you stressed out or causes high levels of stress for you, and then if you can, reduce it or at least try to eliminate those factors, or even finding ways of coping, whether it's holding, like you said, you're like to be like the advocate amongst your friends of like promoting self-care, like even holding your friends accountable, or even your people in your life, like I want to see you do better, I want to see you improve your well-being, and just doing something that you guys can do collectively, or even like being someone who can advocate for each other to like promote self-care in their life. Because I feel like, especially we were talking about earlier, how I feel like Africans, we don't know what self-care is. And it can just be the simplest thing, like just taking a walk. Maybe it can get done as a family too. Like you guys can go to the park, spend X amount of time here, and then that way that you can gradually not only install those habits in your own personal family, but also it affects the community as well. Because if someone sees you doing it, they also want to mirror that as well. So it can be a ripple effect as well.
There's also this factor that when people take self-care, they feel bad. Like they don't, for some reason people I think believe that they don't deserve self-care, and I think in the Somali community that is a lot, especially with the women, since they're constantly doing so many things, juggling so many things. At the same time, it's like, oh, if I take a couple hours away from my kids, then I feel bad because maybe I'm less of a mom, I'm not being there for them and stuff like that. And just basically normalizing what self-care is. Like, we're all human beings, we deserve time to do something that we genuinely enjoy without us feeling bad about it, especially with the kids too. Kids, younger kids also have to deal with a lot too, and which includes also making sure that their parents are happy with them, and just hanging out with their friends or just doing something that they like, they feel guilty about it just because they're like, oh, I'm not with my parents, or this is not going to make them happy, so I'm just not going to do it. Self-care, I think, is just what's needed, and it's just what gets you to a healthier mental state in the long run. Yeah.
What's the best treatment? How can we incorporate religion into it and culturally responsive treatment? Maxaa ugu fiican? Habkee ugu wanaagsan marka ku saabsan tahay
daaweynta cudurrada dhimirka gala.
sax saa ugu dari karnaa
diinta sida diinta ugu salayn karnaa iyo dhaqanka.
So one of the things we do is when someone comes in for assessment is we assess the distresses and the barriers in history of the person. And by collecting the history, you're trying to find when the problem started, what support system they have, what people they interact with, what is their value, what is their baseline, what system worked for them, what cultural things they have, positive and negative, both, because culture can be sometimes negative. So we evaluate person and the systems they interact with, families, work, school, all these. What that gives you a picture of is where the strength of the person is, where they are lacking, and how mental health comes to become the problem. If the person has a faith, it's a strength. If they are connected with their church or religion, mosque, it's a strength. If they're connected with their community, it's a strength. If they are connected with other systems that support them, it's a strength. So I'm a Muslim person. Whenever I encounter someone having a mental health, I always ask, do you have a faith? Do you go to church? Are you a member of religious affiliations? And what I'm trying to find is hope for that person. Oftentimes when you're in distress and you have depression or anxiety, you're in a dark place. And you're trying to lift that person from that dark place. So how religion comes to play is instilling some sort of a hope. Because when you don't have hope, what happens?
you spiral back to the dark place. So how religion can play a role is the idea of I am not in control. There are other forces. There are other things I interact with. There are other support systems I can incorporate to my well-being. Sometimes what happens is with mental health is you find people who are at the bottom of the pit. They're suicidal. They have no desire to go on because I'm just done. Where religion comes to play is that hopefulness. Culture comes to that hopefulness. You're not alone. There are other people who are struggling, who are suffering. You're not alone. So not being alone, recognizing and normalizing that you're not alone is how you incorporate religion into the treatment plan. If the person is Muslim, it's easier, even though sometimes it's really hard. Because what I found is most young generations struggle with that connection with God, and they're like, I don't know why I'm being punished. They see it as a punishment. I must have failed. I must have done something to God that is punishing me. So what you're trying to take out of the context is even good people get bad things happen to them. It doesn't mean you're bad. Even good people have struggled. Even good people who are religious struggle. So you're trying to say you're not the only one. And I think that's how I incorporate therapy into a treatment plan, into having a culture or religion, support system, kind of drawing out the strength of the person rather than the problem. So we're trying to minimize the problem, amplify the strengths that they have, and then saying, here is how you can come out of this dark hole that you're in.
Oh, that's beautifully said. I don't even know how else to add to that. I just had some resources just for people. I don't know if that's, should we do that?
That's a good idea.
Yeah, that's good. Wrapping it up with resources.
If whoever's watching this video, I think it's really beneficial if you take the time. That there's a few resources I thought, and you guys, anybody else can add to it as well as anything that you guys can think of. The crisis hotline is 24 hours, 24/7. So if you are in need or know someone else who is in a crisis and would like to speak to someone anonymously, the crisis hotline is also an available tool to use. And then NAMI is having, they always host free mental health first aid. Basically like CPR training, you don't need to pay anything. Basically what it is being an advocate, they teach you how to identify suicidal thoughts and behaviors, acute psychosis and overdose and withdrawal. So it necessarily doesn't have to be you who's dealing with a mental health illness, or if you know someone, or even just to have this training is super beneficial, and it's free. And I can send the link to Sophia, and they're having a few dates. Friday, April 19th, that just passed. Well, that's next week actually. Friday, April 19th, Friday, May 10th, and then Friday, June 14th. Those are free training that you can just use just to benefit yourself as well as the greater community.
You don't also have to be a person who experiences mental health. You can also be someone who is a caregiver to someone who has mental health related illnesses. So the parents can get the education in, for example, if your child or someone you care for has a psychosis, how to take care of them. There's a great help. I think it's UDA, NAMI. There's several trainings that are coming up. The other thing is, if you're a young person, you don't have to talk to someone. You can also text, and through text, kind of talk through the process of you being helped to deal with your suicidal ideation. I don't know the number, but there's a number for youth.
And we can all be allies too. That's one thing that we can all be, and be there for the person that's like going through it. Whether it might be like minimal things, or like, you know, when it goes to that route of suicide, make sure like, you know, tell them that there are resources out there that you might want to look into, even though you're not a mental health expert, you know, but you can still be an educated ally and still be there for them. And just listen, hear them out, and like, you know, make sure like you just listen and not make it about you, just like internally process it and such. So I don't know, we can all take this accountability and just like be allied for anyone that's like going through it. And yeah.